The biting December wind howled through the empty streets of downtown, carrying with it the scent of roasted chestnuts and distant laughter. Amid the holiday glow of twinkling lights and bustling shoppers, a group of kids stood huddled together on the corner of Main Street. Their faces, pale from the cold, betrayed their disappointment as they clung to their instruments. Deshawn, the eldest at 15, tightened his grip on the neck of his battered guitar. "We practiced for weeks," he muttered, his voice taut with frustration. "How could she just—" He trailed off, his breath visible in the freezing air. "Say we're not suitable?" Kesha finished, her voice trembling, not just from the cold but from suppressed tears. At 13 she was the group's lead singer, her powerful voice now silenced by humiliation. Her hands clutched the microphone stand they had cobbled together with duct tape and a metal rod. Elijah, the youngest at 10, shivered in his oversized coat. "We didn't even get a chance," he whispered, looking up at the others. His small hands clutched a tambourine, its jingles muted by his tight grip. The memory of Mrs. Whitman's words echoed in their minds. "You're not suitable for tonight's crowd," she had said, her gaze sweeping over their thrift store clothes and patched shoes. The polished choir of kids she had chosen instead filed past them with smug glances, their pristine robes fluttering like flags of privilege. Deshawn sighed, glancing at the sidewalk around them. A few passers-by paused to glance at the dejected group but quickly moved on, lost in their holiday errands. "Maybe we should just go home," he said. "No," Kesha said suddenly, her voice firm despite the tremor. "We practiced too hard for this. If they won't let us sing there, we'll sing here." Deshawn frowned. "On the street?" "Kesha, no one's going to listen." "They will," she interrupted, her eyes flashing with determination. "They just don't know it yet." Without waiting for a response, Kesha adjusted the mic stand and took a deep breath. "Elijah, give me a beat," she said. The boy hesitated but tapped his tambourine against his palm. The soft jingles echoed faintly against the surrounding brick walls. Deshawn sighed, his fingers instinctively strumming the opening chords of Silent Night. Kesha's voice broke through the cold, a tentative note that blossomed into a melody. Her words soared into the frigid air, weaving warmth where there was none. The street seemed to change as their music filled the night. At first it was just a young couple who paused, their hands entwined as they swayed to the tune. Then an older man leaning on a cane stopped, his weathered face softening. Kesha's confidence grew, her voice wrapping around Deshawn's guitar like a ribbon. Elijah's tambourine added a cheerful rhythm, and soon the three of them were lost in the music, the sting of rejection melting away. "Hey," a voice called, startling them. Deshawn stopped mid-strum, his eyes darting to the man approaching them. He was tall, with a camera slung around his neck and a beanie pulled low over his forehead. "What's going on here?" "We're just—" Kesha began, but the man raised a hand. "Don't stop. That was incredible." He glanced at the guitar and tambourine. "Why aren't you on the main stage?" Kesha hesitated. Deshawn spoke first, his tone clipped. "They didn't want us." The man frowned but said nothing. Instead he reached into his bag and pulled out a small camera. "Mind if I film you? I think more people need to hear this." Kesha looked at Deshawn, her eyebrows raised in silent question. He shrugged. "Why not?" "Great," the man said, adjusting the camera's settings. "Name's Marcus, by the way. Whenever you're ready." This time the group launched into This Christmas, their voices harmonizing beautifully. Marcus filmed with rapt attention, occasionally stepping back to capture the small crowd that had gathered. When they finished, applause broke out. Coins and dollar bills landed in Elijah's tambourine. The kids exchanged wide-eyed glances. "You've got something special here," Marcus said, lowering the camera. "Trust me, this is just the beginning." The next morning, Kesha woke to her sister Tasha's shrill voice piercing the thin walls of their small apartment. "Kesha, come here. You've got to see this." Groaning, Kesha stumbled out of bed, rubbing her eyes. Her legs ached from standing on the cold sidewalk the night before. "What's the emergency, Tasha?" Her sister shoved a phone in her face. "Look." Kesha squinted at the screen. A video was playing, and it took her a moment to realize what she was seeing. It was them, her, Deshawn and Elijah, singing on Main Street. But what stunned her was the number below the video. 82,000 views. Her breath caught. "Is this real?" Tasha nodded so fast her braids whipped around her face. "It's all over social media. Everyone's talking about you." Kesha scrolled down to the comments. These kids are amazing. Pure talent. How could anyone turn them away? Someone give them a record deal already. Kesha's hands trembled as she called Deshawn. Across town, Deshawn was helping his grandmother carry groceries when his phone buzzed. "What's up, Kesha?" he asked, balancing a bag of apples on one arm. "Check your phone," she said, her voice breathless. Deshawn frowned but obeyed, pulling out his phone. His eyes widened as he saw the video. "What the?" He trailed off, watching the view count climb in real time. By midday, the video had surpassed 200,000 views. Marcus called Kesha. "Hey," he said, his tone buzzing with excitement. "You're not going to believe this. A local news station wants to interview you kids." Kesha nearly dropped the phone. "What? Us?" "Yeah. They're calling you the Main Street Choir. They love your story." The next day, the kids gathered nervously by the towering Christmas tree in the center of downtown. Kesha smoothed her coat, her fingers trembling. She wasn't used to being the center of attention. None of them were. But the buzz in the air was undeniable. Marcus had his camera ready, his encouraging grin a small comfort against the flurry of activity around them. "You've got this," he said, crouching to their level. "Just do what you do best. Forget about the cameras and the people. Focus on the music." Deshawn adjusted the strap of his guitar, his jaw tight. "It's not the music I'm worried about. What if they think we're a joke?" Kesha placed a hand on his arm. "We've been through worse, Deshawn. Remember when we started? Singing in that echoey gym with barely anyone listening? If we can survive that, we can survive this." The local news crew finished setting up. The reporter, a woman with a warm smile and a bright red scarf, approached them. "You kids ready?" Kesha nodded, her heart pounding so hard she thought it might drown out the opening notes. Deshawn started strumming and Elijah's tambourine jingled softly, setting the rhythm. Then Kesha began to sing. The first notes of "O Holy Night" floated through the chilly air. Her voice trembled at first, but as she saw the growing crowd, their faces lighting up, their expressions softening, her confidence grew. Deshawn's guitar wove through her melody, steady and strong. Elijah kept the beat, his small hands moving with determination. The city square transformed into a concert hall. Pedestrians paused to listen, their hurried steps slowing. A man with a steaming cup of coffee stood mesmerized. A woman holding shopping bags wiped away tears. By the time the last note faded, the crowd erupted into cheers. For a moment, Kesha couldn't believe it was real. Then Elijah's voice broke through the applause. "They love us," he exclaimed, his eyes wide with wonder. The reporter approached them, microphone in hand. "That was incredible. How does it feel to go from singing on the street to being a viral sensation?" Deshawn stepped forward, his voice steady despite the whirlwind around them. "It feels good," he said. "But we're not just singing for us. We're singing for kids like us, kids who've been told they're not good enough. Because we are." The reporter smiled, clearly moved. "What's next for you all?" Deshawn hesitated, glancing at Kesha and Elijah. They didn't have an answer yet, but in that moment they all knew one thing. This was just the beginning. By the end of the week, the video had surpassed 1 million views. Social media exploded with praise, and hashtags like #MainStreetChoir and #VoicesOfHope began trending. Donations poured into the crowdfunding campaign Marcus had set up, reaching over $50,000 in just a few days. The kids were overwhelmed by the attention, some of it positive, some of it not. Kesha's phone buzzed constantly with notifications. She tried to keep up with the flood of comments, but the occasional cruel words stung. "They're just kids. They'll never make it. Probably staged. No way they're that talented." Deshawn, usually the group's rock, began to retreat. He stopped answering calls and skipped a few rehearsals. One evening, Kesha found him alone in the school's music room, strumming his guitar softly. The sound was raw, filled with emotion. "Hey," she said, sitting beside him. "You've been quiet lately." He didn't look up. "I don't know if I'm cut out for this. It's like everyone's watching, waiting for us to fail." Kesha placed a hand on his shoulder. "We've faced worse, remember? And we've got each other. We can't let them win." Deshawn finally looked at her, a small smile breaking through. "You're right. Let's show them what we've got." Christmas Eve arrived, and with it, the group's biggest opportunity yet, performing at a prestigious charity gala. The venue was dazzling, adorned with sparkling lights and elegant decorations. The crowd was a mix of local celebrities, philanthropists, and even Mrs. Whitman, the concert organizer who had dismissed them. Kesha's hands trembled as they waited backstage. "What if we mess up?" she whispered. Deshawn smirked. "We've sung in worse places. Just think of it as practice." When they stepped onto the stage, the room fell silent. Deshawn strummed the opening chords of their original song, Voices of Hope. Kesha's voice soared, weaving through the melody with a power and emotion that silenced every whisper in the room. Elijah's tambourine added a heartbeat to the performance, steady and uplifting. As the final note faded, the audience rose to their feet, clapping and cheering. Kesha's eyes scanned the crowd, landing on Mrs. Whitman. The woman's cheeks were red as she clapped hesitantly, avoiding Kesha's gaze. Afterward, Mrs. Whitman approached them, her voice trembling. "I was wrong to dismiss you. You've shown us all what true talent and resilience look like." Deshawn nodded, his voice calm but firm. "Thank you." By New Year's Day, the kids had signed with a talent agency. They used the crowdfunding money to buy new instruments and donated the rest to their struggling school. The dilapidated classrooms and outdated supplies were replaced with resources that transformed the environment for every student. But their proudest achievement was starting a program called Voices of Hope, aimed at teaching music to underprivileged kids. The program quickly grew, ensuring that no child would ever feel dismissed or suitable only by someone else's narrow standards. As they prepared for their first national TV appearance, the group gathered in their usual rehearsal space. Elijah looked up at Kesha and Deshawn, his eyes shining with determination. "Do you think we'll ever stop singing together?" Kesha smiled, her heart full. "Not as long as we have a story to tell." And their story, a tale of resilience, hope, and the unifying power of music, became one the world would never forget.